It's a new year for the PFL, and we started with PFL Europe. Of course, the original format and the regular format for the PFL will continue next week on their first show in America, but we will start this week with PFL Europe, and in the main event we have got Simeon Powell versus Mohamed Amine, and then also Dakota Ditcheva in the main event. A lot of up-and-coming fighters and a lot of fighters that it's interesting. We'll talk about the entire format in a second, but of course, Simeon Powell and Dakota Ditcheva, the two faces of PFL Europe. And folks, if you haven't yet, though, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more MMA here on the channel. Yesterday, we posted our UFC San Antonio predictions with Marlon Chito Vera and Corey Sandhagen in the main event, so go check out that video if you have not yet. Link is in the description down below. Okay, so the way PFL Europe is going to go, it's similar to the actual PFL setup, but it's a little bit different. There are only 4 weight classes. Of course, Simeon Powell leads the charge in the 205 weight class for the light heavyweights. Dakota Ditcheva is going to be the star of the only women's division, of course, at 125. And then also we have got 2 other weight classes at bantamweight and at lightweight. Some of these fighters aren't the greatest. I would say bantamweight's a pretty good division. Light heavyweight, let's be honest, it's not that great. We're gonna talk about it in a second. And lightweight, I would say, is better than women's flyweight. Women's flyweight is really weak. You're gonna see it in a second here. So let's get into it. Of course, these first 3 fights, not the women's fight, are not part of the season format. And the season format goes, it's different this year for the PFL. For PFL Europe, it's different. Only 1 fight. It's win and you are on to the next round. So there's 8 fighters, of course, and if you win your first fight, you're down to the final 4, you get to the playoffs. If you win your playoff fight, you are in the world championship fight. So to become the PFL Europe champion, you have to win 3 fights. So that's how that's going to go. But we're going to quickly go through these preliminary bouts. First one, Lewis Monarch taking on Oscar Owensworth. Going to be taking Oscar in this fight. For Owensworth, I do like him a lot more in this one. He's coming into this fight with a record of 6-2-1, taking on a guy who's 12-6. Again, 6-fight unbeaten streak for Owensworth. Started his professional career 1-2, but has won a bunch of fights since that start to his career. So I'm going to take Oscar in this fight. Next up, we've got Lewis Lee Scott taking on Sam Robinson. Going to be taking Scott in this one by first round knockout. He's the better fighter. He is definitely the better fighter in this one. He hasn't really taken on any tough opponents, but when we look at his opponent in Sam Robinson hasn't really fought anybody either. Robinson's 2 fights against a guy who's 0-19 and 0-0, and those fights came in 2017 and 2018. I'm not overly impressed with Lewis Lee Scott as well. He's not beat a guy with a winning record yet in his career either, but he has been really active. All of his professional fights, have come after Sam Robinson last fought. So we're going to take Lewis Lee Scott by first round knockout. Next up, it's an obvious one, probably the lock on the entire card. Lewis McGrillen Evans taking on Sahih Kulukin. I mean, this is an obvious one. Evans has gone through guys. The guy's only 22 years old. This is one of PFL Europe's, better prospects, I would say. I don't believe he's actually on the bantamweight roster, but this is a guy who next year, if he wins a couple fights with the PFL on the prelims, he will be on that bantamweight roster. He's going to go through his opponent here, first round knockout, taking on a guy 6-7-1. This is all day in this fight. And now we've got our first fight with the actual season format at women's flyweight. Starting off the main card, we got Lizzie Gevers taking on Valentina Scatizzi. Gonna take Lizzie Gevers in this fight. 2-0 so far, 2 wins, both by submission. Really good grappler in Gevers in this fight. She'll be taking on Valentina Scatizzi, who just did lose her last fight to a fighter who was 4-6, Samantha Jean Francois. Yeah, this is a fight that Lizzie Gevers is going to win. I don't think it's all that competitive. I think it's going to be a takedown, submission, and it should push Lizzie Gevers to the second round. And our first fight here with the light heavyweight side of things, we've got Abdullah Er-Ramy taking on, I'm not even going to try to pronounce, Madeleine Pirvulescu. Okay, I'll be honest with you. So I've talked about this before. I am not too familiar with European regional fighters. If it's American regional fighters and it's the guys are coming from Fury, they're coming from CFFC, they're coming from, FAC, if they're coming from Titan FC, I likely know who they are. Some of these guys, I, again, am not too familiar with. I'll give you my best insight on what I think what's going to happen with each of these fights, but, some of these guys I am not too familiar with. So we've got Abdullah taking on, from Romania, we've got Pirvulescu. He's 5-1 professionally, fought twice in KSW, has a win over there, first round knockout in his first fight. His second fight lost in the first round with a head kick in 38 seconds. He'll be taking on Abdullah Er-Ramy in this one from Morocco, but now fighting out of Spain. He is on a 5-fight winning streak. Solid prospect for the PFL to pick up here. A lot of knockouts, and what I can tell you from this fight, you're probably going to get a knockout out of one of these guys. I think the Romanian here has fought some of the better competition outside of PFL. Obviously, both guys' first PFL fight, but I think he has fought the better regional talent. Of course, coming from KSW, I know he got flatlined in his last fight, got knocked down in the first round, but his win back at KSW 75 late into 2022 was good. A first-round knockout win over against a guy who was 6-1, or who was actually 6-1 going into that fight. Pirvulescu has got five wins, all by first-round knockout. He's going to go in there, and he is going to try to finish you. And for Abdullah, his last fight, first-round knockout. Both these guys are going to swing in there. This is why these guys are on the PFL Europe roster, but I'm going to be taking the Romanian in Pirvulescu to win this fight by first-round knockout. Should be a train wreck, though. And this is what I'm talking about. Okay, this is what I'm talking about with the PFL and this Europe format, especially trying to find 8 fighters who are all European at the women's flyweight division. Cornelia Holm taking on Marta Waliczek. Okay, so Cornelia Holm's 5-5. She's Swedish. She's 34 years old. She lost her last fight by ground and pound in the 3rd round. She has lost 4 out of her last 5 fights, and now she's getting a chance to potentially win 3 fights and become a world champion. She's taking on Marta Waliczek, who's 35 years old, who has lost 2 out of her last 3, who won her last fight by unanimous decision. This is tough. She fought Julia Stoliarenko back in 2019. She fought Lucia Puzelova back in 2021. She fought her again in 2020. She fought her actually twice in 2021 in Octagon when Puzelova was making her little run to get back to the UFC. Obviously, Puzelova came back, beat Wu Yanan in Salt Lake City in August, and now she'll be taking on Jocelyn Edwards next month on a fight night card. So obviously Waliczek has fought the better fighters. I'm gonna call her Marta because I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name right. She's obviously fought the better fighters, so you can't really. So with her little losses, you can't be too harsh on her. But for Cornelia Holm, she fought Lucia Puzelova as well back in 2020. So it's tough what we're going to get out of this fight, really. I think Marta is the better fighter when you just look at it. Holm has lost to other fighters not named Lucia Puzelova. She got finished in her last fight by ground and pound. I think Waliczek is better. Again, this could go either way, ever so slightly, though. I'm going to take Marta. It's a toss-up. I think she is better all around, so I'm going to give her the win in this one. Next up, back at light heavyweight, we have got Anthony Salamone taking on Daniel Ladero. I'm going to take Anthony Salamone by unanimous decision. This is why. Daniel Ladero is a guy who has not won a fight since 2019. He did lose his last fight when he came back after a 3-year layoff, lost to Matthew Byfield by TKO in the 2nd round at Cage Warriors 147. For Ladero, his 3 wins all come by submission. The second of the 3 both come by heel hook, and they're all in the 1st round. The 2 heel hooks and the guillotine choke finished back in 2019. The thing is, again, though, he won 3 fights in 2019, and he has not won since. He'll be taking on Anthony Salamone in this one. Salamone's a guy who fought Will Fleury on the PFL playoffs card in 2022. Picked him to lose against Will Fleury. Fleury beat him by unanimous decision. Fleury, of course, will be fighting in the actual PFL season against Omari Akhmedov, and I believe it's next week, actually. Yeah, Fleury's fighting next week against Omari Akhmedov. We'll talk about the fight when we get there. Salamone, I think, is better. And so both these guys are decent on the ground. I would say really good on the ground. Ladero, that's how he wins fights. Salamone can get it done on the feet as well, but also good on the ground. Where this fight's going to cancel out, though, is that Salamone's going to be able to have the advantage on the ground, or at least he'll be able to dictate where this fight is end up. So if he can keep Ladero standing, I think he should be able to win. And that's what I'm going to pick here. I think Salamone is going to beat the white gorilla and Daniel Ladero in certain spots in the ground, but also keep him standing and then beat him on certain spots in the feet. So that's why I'm going to take Anthony Salamone to win this one. I think we'll get it done by unanimous decision. Okay, back at women's flyweight, we have got Gret Eeckhout taking on Mafalda Carmona. Can be taken Eeckhout in this one. Eeckhout fought in Bellator a couple fights ago. Lost to Mandy Baum by unanimous decision, but came back, won her last fight by KO. Late into 2021, was booked against Caitlin Neal on the PFL Challenger Series, but Eeckhout had to withdraw from that fight, so Caitlin Neal ended up fighting someone else. Caitlin Neal ended up winning her fight, but Eeckhout now getting the shot with the PFL Europe card. Solid ground fighter. Eeckhout can get it done on the ground. She's not bad on the feet either. All around a pretty, well-rounded fighter, and she'll be taking on Carmona in this one, who did pick up a win in her last fight, winning by rear naked choke in the 1st round against fighters 0-2. Before that, losing back-to-back fights to a fighters 2-1 and 11-5-1. Again, we've talked about it before. We're going to talk about it again. This is the problem with the PFL Europe card and the PFL format. You got to find 8 fighters who are, at the level to potentially become a champion at 125 pounds and who are also European. And really, I think there's one, and it's Dakota Ditcheva. Like, let's be honest with ourselves. I think Eeckhout is better than Carmona here. She's going to win the fight. Carmona, I think, has got the slight advantage on the feet. I think Eeckhout's got it on the ground. I think Eeckhout's going to take her down. I think she's going to hold her down. But again, you get the problem with the 6-4-1 fighter and a fighter who's 4-2 who's lost 2 out of her last 3. It's tough. I'm going to take Eeckhout, though. She'll get it done by unanimous decision. Okay, our final fight before we get to the final 2, which is really what we're all here for. We have got Ricardo taking on Jacob Nedoh here from Slovenia. Going to be taking Nedoh here. He's 5-1, 5-fight winning streak. His only loss is his first fight back in 2014, so he is undefeated essentially in the last 8 years. He's looked pretty good recently. 3 straight fights, all 3 of them first-round knockouts. And before those 3 straight knockouts in the first round, 2 first-round submissions as well. This guy's a finisher. He is going to go in there, and he is going to try to end fights. 6'4" for a light heavyweight. The man is huge. He'll be taking on Ricardo here, who has fought a lot of UFC-level competition, but hasn't really beat any of these guys just yet. He's taken on Victor Pesta, lost him in 2021. Pesta, of course, former UFC fighter, fought in the PFL last season. I don't believe he's returning. He's going to be fighting KSW now from here on out. But Pesta beat him by knockout in the second round. Lost to Modestas Bukauskas back in 2019. That was before Bukauskas' first run in the UFC. And then also lost to Michal Ozil-Shashek back in 2017, got knocked out in the first round. But what Ricardo's going to do that isn't getting knocked out by UFC-level fighters, he's going to offer something on the feet as well. He is going to throw back as well. But in a fight like this, again, I don't think he's better than the Slovenian fighter here, Nedoh, so I'm going to be taking Jacob Nedoh to win this fight by first-round knockout. I think he's got more power. He's the longer fighter, and I think he's all-around just better striking-wise. So give me Nedoh to win this fight by first-round knockout. Okay, co-main event time, and one half of the reason why the PFL made a PFL Europe League. It is Dakota Ditcheva taking on Malin Hermansson in this one. For Dakota Ditcheva, undefeated, 7-0. They are giving her the Kayla Harrison treatment. This is what this is. This is basically what Dakota Ditcheva is getting. She's 7-0, 24 years old. They're going to build her up very slowly. And she's taken on a fighter who was 5-4, but who has lost her last 3 fights. I'm not saying Dakota Ditcheva is on the level of Kayla Harrison, but someday she may be. Malin Hermansson is not that type of fighter that is going to give Dakota Ditcheva a tough fight at all. Her wins are 2017 against fighters 0-0, split decision. She beat Cornelia Holm, who we talked about earlier in 2018 by split decision. She lost to Victoria Leonardo after that, future UFC fighter for 2 fights, lost by armbar in the first round. Won a fight by split decision against fighters 0-1. Beat a fighter who was 17-14 by unanimous decision. Beat a fighter who was 2-3 in Brave by Rene Kachok in the second round. Then loses 3 straight. The first one being a loss by split decision in Brave in 2020. Then a UAE Warriors loss by armbar in the second round in 2021. Booked against Mandy Bowman in 2021. Fight doesn't happen. Loses by unanimous decision back in 2022. Now here she is against the PFL's most hyped up prospect in this division in Dakota Ditcheva. She's fought twice in the PFL. She's won both of them by first round knockout. What do you think's going to happen here? It will be another first-round knockout for Dakota Ditcheva. 7 wins, 6 of them are by knockout. Ditcheva is going to go in there, and she is going to destroy Hermansson. I don't know what Hermansson does that gives her any opportunity to win this fight. You'd say maybe the ground game. Well, okay, Hermansson's been submitted twice before, so if anything, maybe Ditcheva's got the advantage on the ground. This is all Ditcheva in this fight. She's going to go in there, and she's going to win her first fight in the PFL Europe 2023 season, on her way eventually to the PFL Flyweight Championship. The 2 stars of the PFL are Ditcheva and Simeon Powell for PFL Europe. But Ditcheva feels like a lock to win the women's division just because of the competition. Simeon Powell can screw up and get knocked out, but Ditcheva's 100%, I think, going to win the entire thing. So it's going to be Dakota Ditcheva here to win this fight by first round knockout. Main event time, Simeon Powell take on Mohamed Amine here. Good fight in the main event. I would say one of the tougher fights they could have given Simeon Powell here. I think Amine is one of the better guys that they have at 205. I think Nedoh's really good, the Slovenian fighter we talked about earlier. I think Salamone's not bad, the French fighter we talked about. I think they've got some solid guys in the light heavyweight division, obviously a lot better than what they've got at women's flyweight. And I think Amine's one of the better guys, but unfortunately for him, he's running into the undefeated Simeon Powell, a guy who the PFL featured over on the American PFL. series. I mean, this guy has gone through every opponent they've put him through so far. First fight, he wins a unanimous decision on the Challenger Series against Tobias Baker. He beats Clinton Williams after that by knockout in the third round with the knee, and then he finishes by leg kicks, TKO, in his last performance on the PFL playoff card back in late 2022 in August, right? I mean, Powell's got tremendous power on the feet. He's a really good kickboxer. He can use his kicks effectively. He is huge for the light heavyweight division. We were talking about how Nedoh, the Slovenian guy, is 6'4". Well, Simeon Powell is 6'5", and he's a light heavyweight. The guy's only 24 years old. Again, we talked about it. They built the PFL season around two fighters, Simeon Powell and Dakota Ditcheva. This is, there's a reason on the poster, on all the advertisements for the PFL Europe league, it's got Simeon Powell and Dakota Ditcheva on it. They are the top two fighters in this brand, and this is what they want for this fight. And I'm surprised they didn't give Powell an easier opponent because, for Amine, this is a guy who won his last fight. Given it was against a guy who's 21-15-3, he's had one fight with UAE Warriors. He lost by Americana in the third round early in 2022. He's 5-1 professionally, really hasn't beat anybody too great, but he does have 4 knockout wins, and he can get it done on the feet. And Amine will offer something different for Simeon Powell in this fight. The Dutch striker will, he's a big light heavyweight as well. He's 6'4". He's gonna give Powell some trouble, I think. But I think at the end of the day, I think Powell will find a way to finish him late in the first round. I think Amine will hit Powell a little bit, but I think Powell is going to use his kicks very effectively. He's going to use his range really effectively with that 85-inch reach. And I think Simeon Powell is going to bring it home. I think he's going to win this fight. He's going to get it done by first-round knockout, advancing to the semifinals here with the PFL Europe format. So, folks, thank y'all for watching PFL Europe 1 predictions here on the channel. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure you like if you did enjoy the video. We'll be back next week for the PFL's first card over in America. And we'll be back for Bellator as well next week in terms of MMA here on the channel. So, folks, thank y'all for watching. Make sure that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba forever.